Well, we have a special conversation today. We're going to talk about the new Chicagoland Meetup. And so we have a bunch of people that some of you might know already. Joey is part of the Sacramento Meetup, but he's from Chicago, so he had a big hand in helping getting that one going. Sam has been on the channel before, and it's easy to find Sam in the Discord server. He's pretty active there. And Hank, you and I have done a conversation, but we didn't post it. So you're new to some folks. But what brings all of us together today is our excitement over the new Chicagoland Meetup that started. So why don't we start? Whose idea was this first? Was this Joey's idea, or who really wanted to get this thing going?
Hank should probably talk about, I guess, the previous experience with the Jordan Peterson meetup that you had before this even started going.
Okay.
So we started the meetup March of this year. Unfortunately, it was not as diverse as I'd like it to be, because when we did it as a Facebook group only, and so you got people who had common maybe political interests. And I started expressing some dissatisfaction with that because I didn't see it going anywhere. And saw Sam on YouTube with Paul, and then the Discord server got on that. And then Joey was kind enough to create the Chicago Discord server and start pushing for another Jordan Peterson meetup. And Paul, you were very helpful getting us a church in Wheaton, Illinois that is willing to host it. And our first meeting was in November, and it went very, very well. We then did a meetup.com. So we're on Facebook, meetup.com. And right now I think we're going to probably have 10 to 12 people show up at the next meeting. And I'm looking forward to it, and looking forward to diverse people coming in with diverse viewpoints and having some really excellent conversations.
So Hank, what do you mean by diverse in this case? Because so often when people hear diverse, their mind goes in certain directions. And obviously there was something about what happened in your first attempt that you wanted to set right. Well,
I certainly don't want it to be political, okay? Although politics may be discussed on a general basis based, on what's going on in the culture. I didn't want it to be completely evangelical. That's my background. And so we do have some people who came that have some diverse viewpoints. I wanted to be open to discuss. Sam and I had a lunch, and one thing Sam brought up is this is a meeting where we could discuss some tough things that at church you can't really discuss. Sometimes you feel like Origin, they're going to ride you out of the church and excommunicate you. So I think that these are conversations.
Some of us have reason for thinking that.
Yes. Well, there you go. So I got to tell you, the first meeting went really well. We had a diversity of age, which is good.
Yeah.
So you had some older folks like me, and you had some guys in their 20s and 30s and 40s, and that's excellent. And we started feeling what's going on around here, and starting to have conversations. I think as we get to know each other and new people come in, and we make them feel welcome, that their opinions and their ideas are something we want to hear. I think this is something that's really, really good, because I don't think it's happening. Paul, you and I grew up where you had lots and lots of conversations. You could have disagreements. Disagreements seem to be a problem now, because it seems to be, instead of having disagreements, it's all out war. We have this hierarchy of ideas, and if we don't agree on everything, I ride you out. And that's not a way to live. People are so different. Why not listen and find out what they think and why they think it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Sam, well, let's start maybe bringing Joey first. Joey, a big part of this happened because of this Discord server, and you really were the at least part of the very small team that got this Discord server going. What was your vision for this Discord server?
Oh, that's a big question. Sorry, I'm having some mic issues because I had to adjust things because we got leaf blowers going outside. They're kind of the bane of my recording existence, but we'll work through it. So we had such a successful group in Sacramento. James, who's been on your channel quite a few times, him and I were having a conversation in one of them, and we were just talking about how much value we personally were finding out of it, how much value it seemed like everyone else was getting out of that. And the two of us came to the conclusion that, okay, we've done this, we're feeling the benefit from it, we're obligated to share this with other people. So then the question became, how do we do that? Around that same time, you updated kind of your modus operandi for how you were bringing in new conversations. Clearly, there was a ton of people who wanted to have more and couldn't reach you because you're one person, you had limited time. So we had been experimenting with Facebook groups. We've been experimenting with Discord channels, and we took kind of what we were experimenting with. We rolled it out early. I think I've said this on the channel before, but I was like, there's no way I could run a thing where I'm managing 20 to 30 people. As of, I think this morning, we were about at 580. So, so that grew pretty quick. And then somebody on the channel, I don't know if it was Cord, I don't know if it was Jeff, but somebody set up a Google document where everyone could kind of tag where they were in the US.
I did.
Oh, that was you. Okay,
yeah.
Never mind. So we were trying to figure out how we could tag where everyone was. Chicago came up as a location with quite a few people. And I think it just kind of ran from there. So we've also made accessory Discord channels for Fresno, for the EU. I guess Frankfurt is kind of the location that we're using, but it also includes the Netherlands. So we've had a few in-person meetups there as well. I know we have some success with some people down in Tucson, Arizona, meeting up. Hopefully we can keep that going. Hopefully we can keep that growing in terms of starting lots of little meetup groups, because I think that's where a lot of the value comes from. This is like, okay, it's great that I can talk to Sam from Sacramento to Chicago. It's great that we had all these different things in common that were cool, but ultimately I'm not going to see Sam in person very often. I'm not going to develop that next level camaraderie that you only get from a group that's in person.
Now, Sam, you've been pretty active on the Discord. How is sort of the nexus between getting this meetup groups going connected up with the Discord server for you?
Sure. One thing that Hank and I have talked about, and that we sort of talked about in our first meetup here in Chicago, was just the value of face-to-face interaction and how kind of irreplaceable that is. The Discord's really fun because you hop on there and it's some random combination of people who knows what the topic will be, and so that's fun in its own way. And you start to interact with people over and over again, and you have something of a relationship with those people over time. But having people who live near you that you'll interact with face to face and kind of hopefully be able to build a community that's a little bit more, I don't know, durable and rooted than sort of an online community was something that we wanted to do too. I don't view the Discord as in competition really in any way with these live meetups. In many ways, they enhance each other, and sort of the Discord server hopefully makes more in-person meetups possible. But I don't think that you will get everything out of an online community as you can get from an in-person one.
So for you, Sam, I mean, obviously you're one of our special heretics. We have heretics of many ways, but you actually have a confessional heresy that
sure.
many Christians in the world often don't get a chance to meet. How for you is what are you really hoping for from this meetup?
Sure. So I mean, I grew up going to evangelical churches and was in a lot of like Bible studies, small group, sort of things. That's been a regular part of my life for a long time. And I'm in one right now through my local church. And so I always like having one of those, but sometimes it feels like everyone knows the bounds of the conversation topic that's allowed. And to a certain amount, that makes a lot of sense. And that it's good to channel things into sort of a small bandwidth of acceptable topics. But sometimes you want to talk about things outside that too. And so the thing that got me really excited, because I learned about this whole idea from you sort of talking about your Sacramento one in various videos on your channel and stuff like that. I'm like, well, man, that makes me jealous. That sounds wonderful. I wish I had one of those. It's sort of like, kind of like a Bible study equivalent, but it's not officially church sanctioned. It's sort of in a weird in between. And honestly, I wouldn't mind if we talked a little bit about figuring out exactly what we are, because I tried explaining this to my parents recently, and I was like, well, that doesn't quite get it across. I don't know exactly what words to use to describe exactly what it is we're doing.
And Joey, for you, who we had a guy show up from our meetup on a Sunday morning a couple of weeks ago, and he said, well, Joey said he was going to be here. I said, well, he's not here now. I said, we have the meetup this afternoon. And oh, that's what he meant. So, and Joey, in one of our early conversations about the value of meetups, and you as someone who doesn't go to church at all, mentioned that you thought having it in a church was important, which actually for getting the Wheaton group going was important, because I was able to use a contact that I had from the Wheaton CRC, and the pastor was willing to bring this to council, and they were willing to host it. And I was happy to hear that the pastor went to the first meeting. So, why for you is, this church connection important, which might seem weird to people from someone who doesn't go to church?
Yeah, that's going to be a difficult one as well. I think part of it, so part of this is age. I'm probably I'm a mid-millennial, grew up without church, but I not only grew up without church, I'd say I grew up without any sacred spaces at all. There's the whole meme about safe spaces, which I think is what they're trying to recreate when they're creating those in college areas. But I don't think that does any good, because that treats a sacred space like a therapy session. We have, I guess, elements of that, because essentially what you say in our groups is confidential. It's a closed thing. We don't record the conversations. We don't put them online, because people are experimenting with things. They're playing with stuff. I've said tons of stuff in the group that I believe in a sense, but don't really believe. It's like, how can I describe what I'm thinking, but I got to put it into words. And so a church, because of the inherentness of the building, because of our collective background in Jordan Peterson, just kind of understanding the greater meaning of things, I think it emerges that we behave in a slightly different way. Certainly, the things that you would say aggressively to your friends, the arguments that you would get into on Twitter, the little soundbite stuff that you heard on Fox News or MSNBC, we will repeat those, but we'll kind of do it in a way that we know we're doing it. We'll say something that doesn't really illustrate our point, but then we'll let other people come back at us. I think that's part of it. But and then ultimately, it just it creates something where a community already exists, and it gave us something to do to help people who were being kind to us. The Livingstones has been so graceful in allowing us to meet and everything, and to meet in their building and their facility and under kind of their banner essentially. And we're so happy to return the favor when we get the opportunity.
Hank, I know that you guys in Chicago had difficulty finding a church that was willing to host you, which I personally think 5 years from now, there's a lot of churches that are going to be kicking themselves because they would have had the opportunity to host such a group, but passed it by. Hank, speaking from the position of a guy who's been going to church and been heavily involved in church for a long time, how do you see this whole thing in terms of what would you say to a pastor in terms of why pastors shouldn't, just be willing to do this, but eager to do this?
Well, I think we can look and see that the church over the millennia changes. Okay, whether you read, on church history, I'm reading Tom Holland's book right now. Okay, there's a change. I was involved in one of those changes in the mid '70s when Bill Hybels started Willow Creek, and I was in the music ministry in 1975. So I'm dating myself. He saw a need. The need is that the areas that just been suburbanized, there was a disconnect between the churches and the people that were living there. And he went door to door and asked people what they want out of church. In essence, he created a church that would cater to them coming. Okay, that was wonderful in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but it's changed. Millennials don't want a smoke show. They don't want all the glitz, okay? They don't want all the beautiful people up there singing about how much they love Jesus and praise music. And so church is changing, and I think churches are losing the millennials. And they know it, but they want to keep on talking in their specialized language, in that God language. When we watched Jordan Peterson with the guy from Liberty, he couldn't stop talking the God language. And the problem is, if you don't know what the God language is, as a person who I'm talking to, how can we have a conversation? We have to go deeper to have a conversation. People know that their lives, we're being told all the time, and why new atheism is being thrown aside, that nihilism doesn't work. So people are looking at religion, whether it's G.K. Chesterton, who said, if you stop believing in God, you're not going to stop believing, you'll just believe in anything. And C.S. Lewis, there's a lot of wisdom over the years. Well, in essence, Paul, you are now a megachurch pastor. Your megachurch is with this 12,700 people that follow you, and your little church plants are these Jordan Peterson meetup groups and I think it's important to have those. I think that people would not normally come to a church and they would get turned off by a lot of the artifices of the church, still need meaning and want to hear about it. But they don't also want somebody to be ramming the 4 spiritual laws. They want to be heard. And there has to be a discussion. And at times, I'm more of God will work as God will work. And it's not up to me to put my hand on your shoulder and say, brother, you need to come to the Lord. That's God's job, not my job. But what I can do is certainly have conversations with people and listen. I have a deep respect for Sam and others in our group. And I think that the more that we can have these conversations, the more that we can understand the other person's point of view. Maybe I change. Okay, it's, if you've been married, you change. Okay, sometimes that change is real rough, but you change. So I always say 30 years of marriage, 5 of them good. But I wouldn't change a minute of it because it's made me a better person than I am today, than I was 30 years ago. So I'm excited because I see when I say a diversity of people, we have one guy who's a Buddhist, okay? We have Sam, I love Sam, he triggers Esther all the time, okay? Sam, I love you because Esther just goes nuts. She flies off, and of course, I'm enjoying it immeasurably. But I think what happens is when we ride people out, we're basically saying, I want to be in this little holy ground in only what I believe. And if you don't believe exactly what I believe, well, you know what? I'm the defender of the faith. You're out of here. I just don't see how that works. I didn't marry my wife to have her think the same way I think. And so I like this. So, and I enjoy your conversations, and seeing young men, especially younger men, who are struggling with how do I fit in? Okay, what do I do in the anger, or the anxiety, or the sense of despair. I think that what you and I present, you more so than I, is hey, there's a way through this. There's a way that you can go through it. And that's what I'm hoping for.
So much of the conversation now, or just general conversations, are set up in a way that they go in a direction, and then as soon as you hit the slightest barrier, the conversation is supposed to stop. That's not how people learn. That's not how people grow. That's not how I understand Paul's beliefs better. That's not how you understand Sam's beliefs better. So it's like we know we're here. We know we're going to be in this room for 2 hours. We're all going to keep asking each other questions. We're all going to try and not get angry. We're going to try and actually understand each other. It's just so much more rich than anything else that we have access to. I think podcasts open a lot of this up because they have the 3-hour conversation format where it's like, oh, wow, when these people really start asking each other questions and really start exploring things, there's so much interesting stuff under there. We can do that with each other. And then that's what these groups for me give me an opportunity to do.
And part of what's so cool is that what we had with mainstream media is you have, very narrow bandwidth, talking heads, experts on things. I have learned so much. I mean, my channel has had many randos, and after talking to, a few people of a little bit of status, in many ways, I prefer the randos because I learned so much more, because randos are far freer to say what's on their mind, say what they think. And you can actually get a better view of what's going on out there in the world.
I think another thing that's interesting about this is that this isn't so associated with church where it feels like an evangelism project, right? It's not like, oh, we're going to watch a Jordan Peterson video, but first you have to listen to our 15-minute gospel presentation, and we'll hound Joey every, end of every meeting and ask him where he's at. It's something that Joey and anyone else who's at any stage of faith can come to for their own reasons. And there's a certain level of authenticity and honesty about that is sort of different than the way churches have previously kind of related to the edges of the non-church world. And that it's an equal footing that brings us together, and that we can have our own motivations and our own goals and the own topics that we have building up in our heads that we want to talk about. And that's just that's fine.
And a freedom to talk. At our last meetup, someone said something which I won't say here, but there was just silence in the room because, such words are, and frankly, shouldn't be said in many places. But this person had at least had the felt freedom to look around the room and say something. And when I'd run Bible studies in the past, I would tell people, I would say, I want this to be a place where you can, if you honestly believe something, I would rather you say it, because then it's out there on the table, and we can deal with it. If you don't say it, well, what are we doing here in this space? And so the meetings have been places where people could speak their honest truth, whatever others in the room felt about it. And, to know and be known is something that we deeply, deeply want.
I feel like it's marketing free too. A lot of the mega churches that we alluded to, I've started to gain a different appreciation for them. I don't know that I would never attend one. They're not my thing, but I see why people go to them. But I see why people are turned off from them as well. They're advertising, they're marketing, not gimmicks, but they're marketing entities that their purpose is to grow and attract new members. And they're gonna select for people that have a certain cluster of personality traits that maybe benefit the most from that kind of group. every single church cannot follow that same model. Living Stones would not benefit from that model. It's just not the right location, not the right demographic people that are in there. It's not that, like, it doesn't have that room for growth. It doesn't have that room for parking. I mean, but so then with a group like this, a Jordan Peterson group, no one's given me a survey saying on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you accept Jesus into your life? Like, that doesn't make sense. So no one's ever asked. Yeah, we're doing something cool. We're doing something different. I've kind of gained a reputation on the Discord server as, like, I'm an atheist. Like, that's where I'm at. I never thought I would be stepping foot into a church to do just about anything besides go to a wedding or a funeral. And, you know, here we are 2 years later, and it's something else.
Well, to tie on what Joey said, churches were meant to be communities. And in communities, you have people who have very diverse ideas. And what's, I think, happened is sometimes people sort of stuff things down that they're questioning. And, you know, another thing that triggers people is someone like John Walton. John is someone that Paul knows and Sam knows. He comes out of an evangelical background, and he basically said, well, we need to review Genesis 1 and 2 based on a lot of archaeological things. Boy, did he stir up a hornet's nest. But for years, I got to tell you, as a guy who's been a Christian for 44 years, Genesis 1, 2, and 3 just didn't make sense to me. I'd read it and say, no, hold it, you have Adam and Eve, then you have Cain and Abel, and then you have Cain killing Abel, and then Cain freaking out that somebody else might kill him. Who's the somebody else? Where did they come from? Okay, I'm reading it as a book. Hold on, stop. Okay, and no, Hank, you got to understand, the world was made in 6 days. God rested on the seventh day, because at the time I didn't realize that this was a response to Darwinism. That the early church didn't see that as a creation story. They saw it as God coming down and ruling. And we don't have these conversations, because when we have these conversations, people get very, and it's funny, a friend of mine who's a drummer at a church, we were talking and people were a little upset, and I said, so Rich, tell me, does this idea of the earth being created in 6 days or not being created in 6 days affect you? He goes, no, it doesn't affect me at all. I don't really care. And he's a strong believer. And all of a sudden, people just, because they respected Rich, they got quiet. Because he's saying, I just don't care. And this needs to stop. We need to be talking about things that are deeper. Okay? And there's a lot of, he also happens to be a therapist, so he understands, he's seeing a lot of what we're talking about. He's seeing people that are having issues. And I just think that a lot of times when I create a silo and I say, Joey, you have to fit in my atheist silo, and Sam, you have to fit in my heretic silo, and Paul has to fit in my double predestination silo, okay? I'm actually making you guys smaller than what you are, okay? I'm taking image bearers of God in my mind and making them so that I can colonize them and say, well, now I have a handle on Joey, I have a handle on Sam, I have a handle on Paul. No, I don't have a handle on nothing, okay? I have nonsense, because people surprise us all the time. And I think that's the wonder of life, is finding out that someone you've known for 20 years is a lot different than what you thought they were.
Now Jordan Peterson's been out of action now for the last number of months. And part of what we deal with is that we've got these meetups that are called Jordan Peterson meetups. And Jordan Peterson is himself sort of he's obviously become a polarizing figure. I was just talking to someone yesterday here in Sacramento, and he's been to one of our meetups, and he was saying, boy, this is a certain friend that I'd like to get to the meetup, but boy, just having Jordan Peterson's name on it, I don't know if he'd come. whereas others it is obviously attracted. And I, encouraged them. I said, we ironically, Jordan Peterson isn't sort of the topic of conversation really in our meetup. He sort of was this flag around which we could find each other. And then we began having conversations which were very open and respectful and free and productive. And so, he's, what do you think we do now with, we don't know what's going to happen with Jordan over the next 6 months or a year, if he's going to return to the public stage, if he's going to be absent. Is this, how do we negotiate the relationships between our groups and whatever happens to this real life human being whose name we've borrowed without asking permission? So I hope we don't get sued.
Well, I was hoping you were going to answer that for us. So I was thinking about that, like Joey brought up marketing. So how do we find the sort of people who would be interested in it? So our first Chicago meeting had 9 people. A majority of them were people who had found us through Paul's various ways, people who are frequent Paul video watchers and maybe on the Discord server or not. And then some people were associated with the church that we were meeting at. It was kind of both of those two things. But that doesn't yield much new opportunity for finding other people who genuinely might be interested in this sort of thing and would like this sort of thing. Who knows? Maybe there's, appetite for multiple Chicago locations and various locations all over the place. But how do we reach new people, and how do we communicate to them what it is that we are so that they even know what it is to look for? I think that's a question that I have been thinking about, and I don't really know.
I'm not as concerned with the outreach, like the saying, oh, we might have 1,000 people in Chicago that want to do this, but we can't get to all of them. The slow growth has been healthy for us. 580 is a lot of people to have on Discord, but they're not all on at the same time. But if we were at 5,000, it would be completely unmanageable. Now we've got groups in multiple places. I think we just kind of do the same kind. The lead by example type thing is, I'll post this on my own Facebook. I'll be like, I've had good luck with this in Sacramento. I have maybe 50 to 75 friends in Chicago. Maybe 1 or 2 of them would be interested in joining this specific Wheaton meetup. Maybe if a whole bunch of people are coming from, the far north suburbs or the far south suburbs, they'll say, well, we'll just have our own meetup instead. And then we've had good luck too with our Fresno group. We have a great relationship with them. They're close by. We have a great relationship with our Alameda group. We have a much smaller group up in Grass Valley, which for people who don't know, that's towards Tahoe. So like all around us, there's smaller groups who interact with us. Sometimes they show up at our meetup. Sometimes we show up at theirs, and it's a great time. But we don't want to ruin what we're doing by turning it into too much of a corporate entity based on growth too fast. Sam and I both have a background in software, same company actually, but like there is something lost when you grow too quickly. And then a lot of people know I have an interest in cults. There is something cultish about things that grow too quickly too. And I'm not actually interested in either one of those as much as I joke around about it.
What do you think about this, Hank? I mean, you said it right out. And I noticed this right from the start, there's this weird similarity to what we're doing, which looks like church planting somehow. And I personally like small church because it affords face-to-face, belly-to-belly, as one of my friends tells me. Our relationship with the Jordan Peterson name is kind of interesting. And how do you see this thing going forward? You're a business guy. You think strategically.
Well, I'm going to go with Joey a little bit. Growing too fast creates its own issues, okay? If it happens to grow somewhat quickly because of the different ways we're trying to, through this video, through Meetup, through Facebook, through other ways of getting people to come, that's great. We could always split up and be smaller groups. If we get 20, we can be 10, and if people want to, they live on the North Shore of Chicago, they can maybe go to somewhere like Northbrook or they're in the South, they can go to Oak Forest. That's wonderful. I think I think this is going to be helpful, and I think that this is something that's very needed. I think, I was turned on to Jordan Peterson years ago, and then of course through the algorithm I found Paul, and I think there's more to discuss. I mean, Vervaeke's doing interesting things. Vervaeke and Pajot had a great conversation. Benjamin Boyce does some very interesting things in my world. Rebel Wisdom is wonderful. There's a lot of things out there, and especially with YouTube and podcasts, that people can bring up and share and say, have you listened to this person? Here's something, here's some ideas. Of course, I think the most interesting person in the world is Job. The guy is unique. But there's, and without this, we would have never met a guy like Job. We'd never met a guy like Sam or Joey or Luke or all these other wonderful people, Mary. And I think that it makes me think more, things that come up. Not just think more, but change. I don't want to be heading towards 60. I don't want to be an ossified guy that this is all the way things are, leave me alone. Okay. That's boring. I hate boring. So
60 is also maybe not the best time to become a revolutionary out of nowhere. So there's got to be somewhere in between.
Hey, I got my Che Guevara shirt.
There you go.
Hey, Moses let him out of Egypt at 80, so Hank's still getting started.
Hey, Abraham was old too. Okay, so I'm looking forward to this, and as we grow, we can, because there's people who have maturity. The pastor at the Wheaton Church has got a lot of maturity. We could find ways to either separate and create another group, or create subgroups when we all get together. But I'm hoping to grow because, like I said, my concern is when I heard that one young man on with Paul, and I put a little thing saying, please come to our meetup group. And I really meant it because, man, I get the anger. Okay? And when you're older, you've worked through all these anger things, okay? Or you hopefully have, or if you haven't, you're in trouble. But a lot of times men have anger, they just don't know what to do with it. And part of it is talking and having other men say it's okay to be angry, but we need to move forward with that. And, we come from backgrounds, Joey, we come from backgrounds where there is a certain behavior expectation that you have to have, and I'm not banging on my church or other churches, but why I like Paul so much is that you tell me the truth. And sometimes we lie. How's it going? Jesus is wonderful in my life. As I'm having all these other problems and I'm going over here and doing this, and Jesus isn't so wonderful in my life. We need to have honesty. And when Paul brought up, and that some guy said something that shocked everyone. Well, sometimes that happens in real conversations where there's trust.
Well, I love what you have to say here, Hank. I think it is needed. And one of the strains that Vervaeke, I loved his conversation with Jonathan Pajot today. And one of the things he keeps bringing up is, we need wisdom, and wisdom is part of what happened, I think, because of the corporations figured out that one of the best ways to shake money out of the population was to divorce the generations from each other and keep them not talking to one another. And so we have, all these names for different generations, and in churches, they often worship separately. So we have churches for young people and churches for old people, and people like this music and people like that music. One of the key things that happens in generations is, in fact, wisdom, where, is there someone who has done something that you want to do? Is there someone who has struggled through something that you're struggling with now. They might not be of a different age, they might be younger or older than you, but when people get together, they can help each other. And one of the things that I've seen in the meetups has been just the sharing of wisdom. I hear again and again on Rebel Wisdom, on many of these channels, oh, we need community, we need community. Well, you know what community takes? It requires time, it requires presence, and it requires commitment. And that has even fallen out of churches, where in the past, 40, 50 years ago, if you were a member of a church, you came every week and you showed up to volunteer and so on and so forth. And that commitment built community. And what has happened in churches and with many other things, I show up when I feel like it. Well, you know what? You don't just show up for yourself. You show up when you don't feel like it for the other person that needs you there, because they might something happened in their life and they need someone, and you're there. And so I right away saw in these meetups, why churches, why pastors? Well, churches and pastors have certain skill sets that whatever you believe in terms of their doctrine or some of their other beliefs, they have those skill sets, and we need those skill sets today, because in many ways they're dropping from our culture, and we're showing the signs of their absence.
Yeah, a subject that came up on the Discord server the other day, someone asked about the Freemasons, and sort of maybe perhaps wondering about conspiracy theories about them. But honestly, one of the things that we're kind of like is like the Rotary or the Elk or the Moose, or like those sort of, fraternity men's groups things. And people in their 30s were about the age when they would start joining those groups. My dad's really involved with Rotary, and they're struggling. They have a huge generational problem, and they're acutely aware of it. And they're, scratching their head and trying to do everything that they can to recruit millennials mainly. And those groups, to varying degrees, I'm not saying we need like Masonic initiation rituals, but they had some amount of commitment to them that was part of what kept them going. And those sorts of groups just seem to be completely foreign to even the landscape of possibilities for the average millennial. But there are groups like that where you get together and you do some charitable cause, or plan global conspiracies or what have you. So I think that some parallel to what it is that we're doing is that these groups are sort of like that, but they're focused on intellectual discussion, philosophy, religious topics, things like that. And we all kind of have this sense that it was Jordan Peterson who cleared the landscape for these things to happen, right? I think a lot of people felt this way watching his videos. If you're an atheist, you're like, oh man, maybe religion actually, I can understand it more than I realized with evolutionary biology and psychology. Or if you were religious, you were like, oh man, I didn't realize that I could understand what I was doing with evolution, religion, and biology and stuff like that. And so it created this shared landscape that was a bridge for people to come to without needing as much history in common as churches normally sort of required. And so it's like we're something between the Masonic Lodge and a church group and Rotary and YouTube. And I still am trying to figure this out.
I have a question for Joey. I think you and some of the guys at your meetup have done work at Paul's Church. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
It's a wonderful thing. That I was a Rotarian, and part of that was the idea, okay, we have some lady who was poor, she needed her house cleaned up and painted, right? Something like that. And after you're done, you felt great about it. I've made somebody happy. I've made somebody just a little happier in a tough situation. I think that's wonderful.
There's a lot we've lost. I grew up mowing lawns. I lived on a cul-de-sac, so I kind of had like a little clustered community of people who knew me and trusted me enough to do that. But so many of the jobs that previously teenagers, especially teenage boys, we could talk about teenage girls as well later, but teenage boys used to be the grunt workers of their neighborhoods. You'd shovel the driveways, you'd mow the lawns, and now all of that stuff got outsourced to people who, you know, drive up, leave. They're not part of it. Generally, your landscaper is not part of your actual neighborhood. That's just how it works. So now this gives people an opportunity to work with their hands. This gives people an opportunity to chop down a tree. This gives people an opportunity to lift heavy things and do different stuff like that. Like, I've been into this like weird sport called slacklining, and now there's people from this group who want to get into this weird sport with me. Just it's something physical, something re-engaging with the body, re-engaging with the mind, re-engaging with the neighborhood, the community. All these things kind of are interwoven. A lot of us younger people were very much encouraged to sports were for jocks. If you're intelligent, you're supposed to focus on your brain, and you kind of let your body go. You kind of let your community go, and all that matters is information and data. But again, Sam probably knows this as well. Information and data doesn't do anything by itself. It has to be implemented. It has to be interacting with something real and something alive. So that I think that's where we're at too. I think that's something that this extended group, this Discord group, the YouTube group does, is like Facebook, YouTube, all of these Meetup.com, all of these technical tools were great. They gave us a tool to get in touch with each other, but we were only using them the way that was most obvious. We were using them to post our pictures. We were using them to share little updates to impress our friends, but we were not using them to create the community that they were capable of creating. So now, Sam said we're creating a bridge in between things. That's exactly why we chose the name Bridges of Meaning. We're trying to create bridges in between all these different groups so that you could create the network, so that you as an individual can express all these different aspects of yourselves, that needs to be expressed in order for you to be that, for lack of a better term, that divine individual in your own life. That's something I felt the lack of. Before I was getting involved in this group, before I was inspired by several of my close friends, before I was really living my own life, I was living a story that other people railroaded me on for my entire life. I've escaped from that. Now I get to cross my own bridges. Now I get to go to my own groups. Now I get to be my own person. And I have a lot of people to be thankful for that. And that's not just people within this Jordan Peterson group, or this Discord server, or this Bridges of Meaning group, but those people are definitely there, and they've definitely allowed me access to the tools that without them would still be incomplete.
We're coming on an hour here, and I think that's probably a good goal for this conversation. Maybe just each of you give a pitch as to perhaps why someone like this might either want to attend a group if you can find one, and you can find, look for them on meetup.com. You can go in the links below. There's a link to the Bridges of Meaning Discord server. That's where Joey came up with that name, Bridges of Meaning, and we can help groups find, or maybe even start a group in your area. We'll help groups start. So maybe why you think this is important, or how it's helped you, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure, I guess I'll go first. I think that, I enjoy few things more than a really good conversation. And I think that there are a lot of people who feel that way. And it can be hard to find. I have some really good long-term friends that I can start those conversations with, but those are, only happen as often as they do. So having a group intentionally devoted to having conversations is something that I was really looking for. And I can listen to my own thoughts when I'm having trouble falling asleep. But the cool thing about other people is they're not yourself, and they think things that you don't think, and challenge you when you say something stupid or that doesn't make sense, and all those things. So if that's something that you're looking for, and if you listen to Paul's channel, probably you are, then, and if you live in Chicago, well, then there's probably a link below to get involved. And if you don't live in Chicago or Central California or something like that, I think that, you know, just start making noise and the people will come around. There's enough people on the Discord server where if you start saying that's what you want, or have a conversation with Paul or Joey or Luke or someone else, I'm sure that you can get the, what's the thing where a nuclear bomb needs that amount, the critical mass to get the group to happen. So that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm hoping for from this group in a purely selfish way, is to have those conversations that I really value and really remember, but are hard to find.
I'll go next. I agree with everything Sam said, and in community. I think that we need to be in community, and we need to have people, and part of that is as we're having discussions and you're building the trust and you're building a relationship. You know, Sam and I went out to lunch. It was wonderful. Okay, I'm sure we'll do other things. I paid for lunch. Sam's going to pay for the beer that we'll have after the next meeting. I'm German, Paul, so I can drink, okay? Very German. Yeah, you know, remember what Rudyard Kipling said, there's humans and then there's Germans. I've lived that. So the idea of community is we have to be in community. And what I've seen sense so much by talking to my daughter's friends who go to college is that lack of community that we had when we went to college, when we did things together. Stupid things as college kids. Things I'll never tell my daughter I did. I don't know if I told my wife. But the idea is that there was a community, there were friendships that were built. I've had these friendships of, Sam met one, Bruno, who goes to our group. We've been friends for 40 years, okay? He's done things at my house. He's a builder. I've helped him out with stuff. It's just been a wonderful relationship. And relationships are just so doggone important.
Joey, why don't you wrap it up?
Okay, well, at the risk of sounding too dramatic, these groups are the things that were promised to me but never delivered. These are the conversations that I want to have on online forums but can't, that I want to get into arguments with people on Twitter and learn from them but won't. The things that you try to get out of people when you're having a conversation on Facebook but can't. The things that college could never provide because college over-selected for age. So you never had the conversation. It was always too much of a hierarchy. There was a teacher and there were students. Now we have that multi-generational people who are engaged, interested, and they just want more. They want that meaning. I guess that's the word that keeps coming up. I think the the maps of meaning work Jordan Peterson did was more important than his 12 rules for life, even though 12 rules was more popular. There's the meaning crisis that we've talked about, and this is not the solution to the meaning crisis in your personal life, but this is the kind of thing that finally gave me the tools to feel like I'm working on it. And that's fantastic. It feels great. And it's free and it's super easy. And so.
Yeah, it is. And so thank you, Joey, and stay on the line. I'll just end the recording, but I appreciate each of you. It's been, again, these last 2 years, I can't believe it's only been 2 years. We started our first meetup in January of 2018. We'll have our 2 year, we'll have to have a party or something in January 2020, a birthday party for the group. But it's, through doing these YouTube videos and the meetup groups, I've met each of you, some of you in person, and maybe one of these days I'm very much wanting at some point to be able to get out to the Chicago and meet with you guys in person. that would be great. But I deeply appreciate each of you and what you're doing. And I really want that, I really want to see that meeting take off and have lots more people be able to have a group that they can trust and gain wisdom within and just, find a lot of life. So thank you all. And those of you who watched, thanks for watching.